I gotta look at that John McAfee thing.
Yeah, we'll open up with Corona and then we'll go from there. All right, we're golden. All right, let's come back here and cue the theme song. Ready, set. Oh. Ready, set, go.
Aliens on the border.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found.
Faster than light, spaceship of the future.
By direction of the President of the United States, stay in your home.
Is it human or inhuman? Earthly or unearthly?
Born in that swirling inferno of radioactive dust, there is no word to describe them.
We may be witnesses to a biblical prophecy come true.
Why is it that we usually ignore the fourth dimension?
Is this the human race of the future?
Aliens on the border.
Hi, everybody. This is another episode of Aliens on the Border. Say hello.
Aliens on the Border. What's up, guys?
Hey, what's going on?
Welcome.
They're doing a quarantine cast part 2. It is technically day 0 of the lockdown. So we're expecting, as of today, any new developments or whatever. The press release came out today officially that actually, you know what? No, last night.
Yeah, right after we ended ours. Yeah.
Right after we ended. Hang on a second. I'm gonna post this so people know that we're live.
I'm trying to find that video.
All right.
It's all good.
So basically, not basically, but where are we at now? As of yesterday, we discussed that everything as far as the first coronavirus confirmed case of coronavirus in Laredo prompted an emergency or public health response. Last night, they've since announced that we're going into lockdown, right? And what does that mean, right? We had already been talking about shutting down for a while. They banned, or they said they would enforce for local businesses that have more than 50 people, including staff, that they would fine them, and that was going to be enforced by the police. Today, or actually yesterday, right after we got off, they apparently, while we were streaming our bullshit, there was a disastrous stream, by the way. I don't know if anybody else saw it, but there was a pretty disastrous stream happening there was a pretty disastrous stream happening by the city of Laredo, who, as bad as a job that we do sometimes with production quality, they were so much worse. It was awkward as hell to watch. But either way, they went forth with an emergency declaration that there is going to be a citywide shutdown, and it's going to be enforced by the police. And this time, instead of it being 50 people at a gathering, it's no more than 10. At that, they were also talking about they're talking about how if you go to work, if you need to go to work, then you're going to work, right? Which I still don't get. That's not really a total shutdown.
Exactly. That doesn't make any fucking sense.
I saw that on the InfoWars, man, this morning, that they had that Laredo thing. There was an article about the Laredo quarantine and the no more than 10 people thing, and it was on InfoWars. It freaked me out because you don't expect to see Laredo on the InfoWars.
Well, the reason why I think, Rick, we're yeah, absolutely, the border town thing, and not only that, but where there hasn't been today they announced that the northern border was going to be closed, right? So USA Canada.
Oh, USA and Canada. Oh shit. Okay.
USA Canada is going to be closed. Trade will not be affected, according to Donald Trump, right?
It's supposed to be like a joint thing, like with him and Trudeau. But then there's a flight coming in from China right now. I think a few hours ago, but it's landing in Canada. So Trudeau is a sneaky guy. So there are people coming in from China.
Okay. Well, I mean, so let's just. So it's
a good thing we shut down the north. You're recapping, right?
That's what you're doing. Yeah, we're recapping. They shut down the northern border, and today, sometime around noon or 1 p.m. or something like that, the city of Laredo put forth the press release, which states specifically, hey, you're not supposed to be anywhere with more than 10 people. Bars are to be shut down. Restaurants are to be shut down. Dining areas are to be shut down. They can only do takeout or delivery. And
I saw
what
that.
else was there? Yeah, takeout or delivery. All entertainment businesses, if you don't have a need to be open, then don't be open. But it was basically the look is that we're going in a total shutdown mode.
I
And
went to go buy
Rick,
water today. Like, I don't know if you guys know where to get water, but the best place to get water is to go, pay your 30 cents and put the gallon in the thing, like by the side of the road. You seen those things, like in Del
Yeah,
Mar
like
and all
Watermill
those
Express
places,
or what have you. Right,
Yeah,
like the little water bills.
or 30 cents. You just put your 30 cents, you put the gallon, and you
yeah,
don't have
yeah.
to wait in
So
lines or anything. That's the best place to get water.
it's
And you
not
can put it's $1 for like 5 gallons.
it's not an Italy level shutdown in the sense where it's like you've got a curfew. I don't think they didn't mention anything about a curfew.
Yeah, I didn't see one. I read through the thing.
You can
My
still.
neighbor said something about 2 a.m.
No, at 12 a.m. tonight or at midnight tonight is when the lockdown officially goes through. But I haven't seen anything as far, or at least there hasn't been any official communication about travel bans or any sort of like, you can't be outside. You can still do all that. It's just gatherings of 10 people or more. No, can't do. So right now there's kind of like in a disarray or whatever, because like what I hear from a lot of my friends is that that they're still being told to go to work. There was a clause today put inside of that emergency thing that states on there that you can't be in a retail store or in any workplace in an enclosed space with more than 10 people. So if you have...
Yeah, we were pushing the limit right now at the Stripes. I went to go get gasoline for my little mower, and like there was one clerk and almost 10 people.
So
in the line.
What I've been hearing some crazy shit right now is that apparently what they're doing at Best Buy, and I don't know if this is confirmed, if any of my Best Buy friends are watching, but I've seen a lot of posts about it. Best Buy is having people be escorted by an employee, a single employee, to walk around the fucking store so they can buy their things, whatever they want to buy, and then they get escorted back out, and there can be no more than 10 people inside of the store.
Yeah, it's the Chinese police state, man. That's all. I mean, we can get into it later on.
Yeah, I wanted to get right into that, and before we do so, I know you guys probably can't see this right now unless you have the stream up, but for the people that are watching, we have up like the actual City of Laredo release there with all the updated mandates and what have you, and it's a 4-page document pretty much. It's been circulating on social media. It's on Facebook if you guys need to look at that. But essentially, what Roger said, and one of the things that's been pissing me off is at my place of work is like literally, and you guys are going to start hearing that buzzing again. I'm sorry, the fucking charger. I know, fuck me, right? But anyways, so literally like my place of work, 700 to 800 employees at any fucking given time of the moment. And, I was, I had to go in today to sign some paperwork for rolling out the whole work from home thing. And, there's still easily just walking in like 100 people that I saw automatically, so like in clear violation of what the city has laid out. I don't know if there's maybe like a loophole that applies to them or what have you. Yeah, like I don't know if there's a loophole that doesn't apply to them or what have you. But yeah, man. And the interesting thing, man. Actually, I don't want to get into all that because it's dumb workplace stuff. Let's pivot instead into. I wanted to have you on, Rick, to have your thoughts on what the coronavirus is. Right, we kind of briefly got into it yesterday, to where one of the interesting theories that I heard from another person that was also on in the audio only episode, which is episode 131 with Los Olvidados. This guy essentially is proposing that this is like the 9/11 of this generation, to where they're essentially creating that Machiavellian moment to, move into, I guess his idea was a new currency, right? I don't know where I stand on that just yet.
That's what we kind of exchanged those texts that morning.
Yeah.
And you asked me about it, and I told you immediately, just 2 words, that it's a economic shutdown. Whatever I told you had to do with the economy.
One of the things.
It's not something that. Look, people die all the time. People die all the time. That's not what this virus is about. This virus is about shutting down the economy. You had people like 50,000 people have died from the flu up to this point right now in current time, March 18th. That's about 384 people dying per day, March 18th. So, maybe there's more now. I mean, those were 2 days ago statistics. 50,000 people. I'm looking at you, Josh, but so there's only like 380 something people have died from the corona, and it's not something that.
Well, the global death count is like over 8,000 as of now.
But remember, we can't trust those numbers coming out of China.
Right. But we can maybe trust the ones that are coming out of Italy. And Italy on its own, it's well over 100. In Italy, it's well over 2,000
now. That 48-story building in Wuhan, where they just like blew up that building, it pancaked on itself. Did you hear about that?
Oh yeah, I did hear about that, Roger. I don't know if you did or not.
Those were all corona survivors that were recovering. It was a corona information storehouse of all this information that we could have gotten from those people, but they blew them up. The building pancaked on itself.
Yes,
definitely.
They did collapse a building.
It's an artificial virus. Look, we have to lay down the groundwork. I've got this paper right here that I told you. It's a French paper, and these scientists are French scientists, and it's an artificial virus. The Indians that came up with the same data back in December and January that proved that it was an artificial virus, they got their stuff taken down immediately by the Chinese government, and those university scientists were ridiculed in all over the internet. This is clearly a weapon, a BS4 level weapon, BS biosafety level 4 weapon that came out of a laboratory that takes a buddy system where you have to sign off that somebody's walking into the door so that they can see that you're operating in there. It's 2 at a time in these BS4 level. So how can somebody sneak something out? This is a coordinated event, but something, as far as the specifics, man, this paper lays it out. It's got pieces of the HIV, it's got pieces of the SARS, and it's got pieces of the MERS, which is that Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome.
Yeah.
So it's got them mapped together. You can see the sequences right here. And
what's your source? Where'd you get that from? What does that mean? Because we can't really
this
see
is from
any of that stuff.
antiviral research. This is a Firewall article. It's not available to the public. So it clearly, what we're looking at is there's a guy, I think it's Dr. Francis Boyle, and that guy's he's our dude in the DHS that handles this kind of stuff. So you can look that up if you want to check him out. But it's really like a lot of that, like what they say, Josh, the gaslighting, those kind of words, those buzzwords.
Right, and
panicking.
Honestly, for me,
that? You guys have been to HEB. That it's an economic stress is what they're doing.
For me,
we can't put sanctions on China anymore. We can't even say like China virus. They're giving the president a hard time about saying China virus.
Yeah, they did do that.
Somebody that wasn't, it was a Washington Post columnist that isn't even a reporter from the White House that started saying that like Kung flu, and now they're asking the president in the White House, in the briefing room, well, what about the people from your department that are saying Kung flu? And he's like, no, nobody here from the White House. It's.
I heard it terrible. Like on a comedian's podcast, that term Kung flu.
Because everything's connected. I mean, we've talked about it before. It's the media right now is that's why the state of national emergency that the president declared is really important, because that gives the president absolute power. So the president can control intelligence. And
I feel like that's a dual-edged sword, though. Especially if the establishment is is not necessarily in the interest of the people, and if they do have
Well,
complete
right now the
control,
establishment is the left, and corporations and
What?
the big
What do you
pharma.
mean? It's the,
That is the
how's the
establishment.
establishment?
That's
Like
not the
I
counterculture anymore. The counterculture used to be the left, like back, when I was a teenager in the 90s.
yeah, I get what you're saying. Where the under the
counterculture
guise
right now
of
is
like the Democratic Party, it's more so like
the left,
centrist
all that
Democrats
stuff,
that are the mainstream, right? Like Joe Biden, like Hillary Clinton. Yeah, right. I see your point there, but what's your objection to that, Roger? You don't think that's the case?
I mean, I think it's really hard to say that's the case when it's like everything that you've seen. Well, I don't know. I'll reserve it on that because I don't want to get that conversation too off the charts, because I feel like if we do, it's going to go a completely different route. But okay.
No. It's really simple, Roger. It's not left. The hard left is married with the establishment, with big pharma, big tech.
Okay.
And
no, I'll say
that's
not.
what I'm
I
saying.
won't
I'm not
say
saying that if you're a lefty, or if you have like these perceptions of Marxism or communism or this idea of socialism and these ideals, that you are not what I say is the establishment. I'm talking about the mainstream, what is pushed out in the media, what is pushed out to us.
I agree with that. Yeah, that's what it's
what I'm saying.
establishment Democrats.
We don't have to go like on a 50-minute rant about anything. That's why I said it's just really simple. Like the current establishment right now is pushing all that quote leftism that isn't the same kind of left.
So they're Democrats.
Yeah, vote blue no matter who.
They're Republicans. Democrats close.
When I said it really fast like that, so that I think Josh asked you like, "Hey, what's your objection?" But you're not really objecting. You just kind of I had to elaborate a little bit. So
it's the whole like the Republican and Democrats.
To bring it back around to the virus.
The virus is seen together in ways where these geneticists were able to identify that the pieces were put together. It's got the HIV tech, so it goes right into your upper respiratory. It's got those other MERS and the SARS. That stuff goes right into the upper respiratory. So the best thing that you could do is just like take the turmeric root extract and the antioxidants and just the basics, like have some colloidal silver on hand just in case you start getting any of those symptoms.
The thing that fucks with me on that end, though, in considering it like a bioweapon or what have you, is the quick pivot from one end to another, right? Like you see the pendulum swing in both directions, where at first, when the media put out, "Oh, bat soup is what caused this," there was an immediate like, "Fuck no!" It's actually a bioweapon.
Right across the street from the fish market.
Right, from the wet market.
I don't know if it's across the street, but it's near.
It's in the vicinity. Right. No, I get that, but my point is that it goes from, bioweapon for sure, right? Like it's been manufactured and everything, and then it takes a hard left, and then it's like, no, it's just actually. A result of mixing different stuff because of the wet market and having different stuff out there, different animals on top of animals.
There was two scientists that were coming out of Canada back in December that were trying to smuggle something out of a Canada BSL-4 lab, and they were Chinese, and they were in the Chinese military posing as scientists. You guys heard of that? You didn't. That was back in December, January, right?
I heard about the guy that the Harvard professor that got arrested. Yeah, that's the one I heard about.
It may have been related to this, but these were two Chinese nationals that were captured in Canada that were trying to smuggle some stuff back to the Wuhan lab, and this happened in late December, early January. That's why it's so disingenuous for any reporter anywhere to talk about information coming out of China as legitimate. We have to treat that information as highly suspect.
Yeah, no, that much I'll agree on. I'll agree on that, considering it's always been like the most censored in terms of media. So that much I agree on. But so basically, like in terms of like conspiracy theory, and I myself haven't really like bought in all that much into any of these theories, but what I will say is that I do think it's the one that I found like the most like prominent one is the whole thing about like election year and stuff. That's always like something in the back of my head, because it's like now all of a sudden Trump is making like socialist moves and like and appealing to the masses much more than you normally see him do, and it feels a lot more of like a reactionary thing for the sake of getting the public on his side. They very much weren't at first, right? So uh, that always sits there. But one of the things that we always, it's very obvious if you're into,
well, it could be
things.
just to say briefly, the public that is like the media driven public, the public that just watches the CNN or the Fox or the MSNBC, because really there was 65 million people that voted for the president, so there is
Right,
a
and he was
large
still
percentage of the public
outnumbered at that point.
that
We're talking
still,
popular vote.
no, because Judicial Watch proved that there were 11 million votes that were cast that were illegitimate, and out of those, they have the court documents that you gotta really check that out. Look, you can pull him up, Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. That guy's really talented. He's a good lawyer. He's suing a lot of people. He sues the federal government a lot to get a lot of information. It's not.
Look,
there was
a correspondence. Yeah, we don't want to go off, but I will say, like, just to that point, there was a correspondence dinner.
Trying to get those people on his side, like those kind of.
Rick, let's let Roger come out with his statement. What are you gonna say, Roger?
You're right. Keep it
up. I was gonna say there was a correspondence dinner where they basically admitted, like they said it, and maybe it was a slip of the tongue, Freudian slip or whatever, where they basically said, "Hey, the Republican Party has worked for the most part off of voter suppression. That might not work this time." And that's just kind of like, yeah, you're talking a lot like when the truth accidentally slips out. I don't want to get into all of that, dude. Honestly, I don't. But my whole thing right now is that we're good sticking to that whole conspiracies on like coronavirus and all that stuff. What do you think, or where do you lie on that? Do you think it's really of like a militarization sort of thing, a police state? Are we looking at population control? Where do you think it lies? I mean, is this
because it's tough to say, but look, I'll tell you a couple things, because there's a few things that you were, in your question there. A few of there's the theory that it is related to the certain factions within our government, the USA government, that were trying to do the coup to overthrow the president, and they've been trying to do this coup since 2016, and so if you follow, this is one theory that's out there. This is one of the theories that's out there, that the Russia hoax didn't work, and then the Mueller report didn't work. The Mueller testifying in front of Congress, that didn't work. Then they brought in the some other thing, the impeachment, and that didn't work. So there's been several of these big attempts. So the only thing that was left was an ultra false flag on the ultra scale or worldwide scale, which is something like this. And so that's one theory. Another theory is that, and that coincides with the timing that you were saying about the election. So that kind of puts that together. But something else is that in 2017, the premier Xi Jinping stood in front of Davos and said that he would bring down the United States. We've talked about this before previously, but that was him and Soros both got up in front of the Davos convention and said that they would bring down the United States. That was in 2017. So we're looking at 3 years in the making. That was back in March, February, around there, 2017.
You say 3 years in the making.
Now that's another theory, though. Hang tight there, Roger. That's the second theory, that Premier Xi Jinping released this weapon in order to suppress our sanctions on China and to de-escalate the Hong Kong riots and the people that were successfully battling for their freedom for the next 40 years, that they still have freedom for at least the next 30 to 40 years until China, the treaty's over that they made with Great Britain. That's another theory. And so that kind of took the wind out of the sails of the Hong Kong. And if you noticed all the other uprisings around the world, where you had the populists that were taking over in Italy, they're overrun now. Italy is one of the hardest hit zones. What you've got going on in India, all of this stuff. Wherever populism was rising, the stamp of China and the one world government has come back down and hit and struck hard. That's another theory, and I'm kind of more with that one because you can't trust the Chinese no matter what. You know, is anything that you want to, you can't, and you simply can't because they don't have the freedoms that we have. The information that comes out of Chinese media is completely controlled. It's not in any way, shape, or form. Those people can't ride the bus; they'll lose. They got the social credit score, so they can't ride the bus. They can't take public transportation, any of that stuff. So they're not going to be able to report if there's 200,000 people in a city of 5 million that have kicked the bucket. You know, and the numbers are a lot higher than the CDC are saying. Besides, China knew about this in December when they were doing all this stuff, and they let millions of people travel, up to 5 million people travel around the world. So that's an incubator right there, if you want to talk about that. You know, but there's a couple theories there. I don't know. The third theory is it's just a big accident, but I don't buy it because the hallmarks of the piecing together the genetics, the amino acid sequences, all that stuff it's synthesized. So no, it's not an accident. But it's definitely economic. It's putting a lot of pressure on the economy. It's a lot of people that are going to suffer. A lot of people that haven't been prepared. That, you know, like you guys can put like the painter's thing on and prepare yourself, and you got to tape the wrists and then put the gloves and then tape the gloves over, and then you got to cover the goggles of your eyes. You got to cover your mouth with the N95. You know, if you don't have money for like a big mask, you know, one of those like a gas mask, ventilators with a water supply, all that stuff. But I mean, there's ways to prep and you can protect yourself. But it's not really going to be as bad as we think, but it is as bad as we think because we've talked about the false flag before. This is the ultra false flag. Like Josh, you were saying about the 9/11 times 10.
Yeah.
Like 20 years later.
And
it's really, really powerful.
Yeah, and I don't know if
It's tied into the economy, so they're not going to let you pay with cash money anymore. Everything's going to be controlled. It's going to be one monetary system, electronic money transfers. You got to monitor everything. Like you were saying about the Best Buy, Josh, Roger, where the guy follows you into the store and.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that more for. I wasn't saying that for like police state or anything like that. I was saying that because it's like you have corporations that are so desperate and greedy to continue staying open, to continue their revenue stream somehow, that they've got to risk employees who are very much expendable to them because you just want to continue making a buck.
The corporation drives the police state because if it's just people being people aren't gonna hurt themselves to get things. But
I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know about all that because we still had it's just the flu bro phase. So I don't know. I still think that people just weren't taking it seriously because I don't think there was a panic with like the media and the way they were reporting it.
More people die from the flu, Josh. More people die from the flu than this. It's not.
Well,
it is serious and it spreads a lot. Really fast.
Hold on. So at the scale of the way that people die and the way that people get infected or whatever, the mortality rate for COVID-19 is much higher than the flu. It's like 10 times that.
No. That's misinformation. It's only a 2.91 to 3%.
No. So, it's been steadily rising.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
No. A lot of these. This is why you gotta base yourself off the numbers that we're having here in the United States. And this French paper the information came out of Lancet. It's coming out of here, Lancet, back in December, which is another journal. They put out the information that this had a 3% death rate. Back in December, everybody thought it was 15%. When Bill Gates did that with the Pirbright Institute, they did a computer simulation, and it was 65 million people died, and that was back in December before all the information broke. This was all on the sub, just following threads where people were talking about this stuff back in December. It didn't break until January into the public, and even then, like by January 6th, the USA had already cut ties with travel for some countries, and by January 30, the USA had completely shut all travel off from those risk countries. We're safe here for now, but the basics are still the same. Like people have to be able to understand the basics of hygiene and that kind of stuff, you know.
Okay, yeah, I still think
it's
it's
still
maybe
the same.
like
Like I don't want you to think that this is greater than. I've got the information right here. It's not greater than the flu. Like I told you, up until 2 days ago, 50,000 people had already died in the USA alone from the flu, just from the regular flu. That's
that's not
384 per day.
but that's like evidence that you from where like where are you getting
That's
that?
statistical evidence from the CDC,
No, the CDC said the exact opposite. The whole thing for like flattening the curve is basically the point is that because of the infection rate, because of the way that we're doing it, it's much more. The mortality rate is much
The
higher.
infection rate is 2.9 to 3. That means that if you have no symptoms, you could infect 2.9 up to 3 people.
That's the exact
That's
opposite.
one person.
That's like a
One
huge
person.
one. I read the other day that was like one person is known to infect 2 people, right? But and that
It's
that is
3.
when they're
3 people.
okay. It's two people at like limited, like 50% shutdown. Without a shutdown, it's like they can infect up to 5.
No. The rate of the virus doesn't change infection based on borders shutting down or limited contact. The virus itself is just a few strands of RNA that's been put together that encapsulates that virus. It's not going to change based on economic forces or policies.
Josh, what are you reading there?
Infection rate 2.9 to 3.
I'm looking at
It's right here. Look, it says right
risk
here.
estimates.
31,000 confirmed human infections and 640 deaths reported by the World Health Organization in early February. That's the world. We had 50,000 deaths of the flu in the USA.
Right, yeah, but that's
at the beginning of March.
That's at the rate you're talking about. You're doing it in a much different like you just finished saying
real. This is real scientists.
You have it printed out. I get it, but I'm talking about how you just finished saying there was what 31,000. It's what like gone 5 over by that point. We're at what? How much are we nationally right now? You had the
really
map
think
up.
That in the world that there's over 150,000 people that have already died of corona?
Yeah, dude, I think we're underreporting the amount of people that are infected.
Cases,
I think we're underreporting the amount of people that are infected.
2,000 deaths yet of corona. It's not.
We're at 8,000 deaths.
China.
What?
8,000 deaths worldwide.
China's at least had like my guess. My guess is that China has already had at least 2.5 million people that have died because they had a concentrated dose in China.
Right. So then people, and so that's less deadly than the flu.
No, but it's going on over there in China. I mean,
what does that even mean? Okay, cool. All right, I'm not.
No,
all right, well, I get it. Well, this is
we're getting this spread, like the spread that you're talking about, where it's like one person gives it over to more people.
Dude, yeah. Okay.
Those people on the Princess Diamond cruise died. You know, those elderly folks. But they were elderly. There's too many coincidences. That's why this is an ultra false flag, because for every person that dies, there's going to be somebody that has some kind of logical explanation for why they're dying.
I don't know.
No, yeah, what I do understand, like, what they mentioned before is that it's not deadly when treated correctly, right?
Man, we had the Chinese, but our foot on their neck, man. They were giving us $375 billion a month.
I'm not. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about, though. That's not what I'm saying. The point is, we're talking.
To the second theory, Roger. The second theory is that the Premier Xi Jinping, he threw this out, and they messed it up. It was released at their BSL-4 lab, and right by that fish market, and it's over. It accidentally got out. They couldn't contain it. They said, "Oh my goodness, we just won't tell the Americans," and they let it out. 5 million flights.
I mean, like
5 million flights.
if you're doing that at that point,
5 million people.
we're talking about bioterrorism at that point, and like how are you
Of
gonna just
course,
let
that's
something?
what I'm talking about.
But yeah, I know. But
Okay, look.
my
So
thing
I'm
is,
real quick to interject. I found a good source here. So CD. This is directly from the CDC. This is on their website. This is the U.S. at a glance right now. Total cases 7,038. Total deaths 97. Jurisdictions reporting cases 54. Right, the 50 states, District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Right, travel related.
Okay, try to look for the numbers on the flu, if you can find it on the CDC website. If they haven't already taken it down, that's gonna really show you the ultra reality. People die from the flu all the time, especially those people that get the flu shot. They have a higher probability of dying than the ordinary people.
The main difference is that the flu has a vaccine, though. We don't have one for
None of those
COVID-19.
vaccines work, Josh. That's a real deal. That vaccines only cause foreign. You're introducing foreign matter into your body with an adjuvant that may or may not contain mercury, and that adjuvant is going to wreak havoc on the neural network in your brain and cause a lot of problems down the line. So no, vaccines definitely you want to just keep keep uh, keep your heart strong and your head clear. Those vaccines they're not good.
Well, I mean, like,
Especially
there's
for
been
the
a
flu.
resurgence of polio and stuff because people stopped taking vaccines for polio. Polio is completely more or less wiped out. You know what I mean?
Here's the basic fundamental for a vaccine. If the vaccine works, then why do these vaccine companies push the vaccine? Why do they care if somebody like me doesn't get vaccinated? Let's just say that the people that are getting vaccinated are getting vaccinated. If I'm not
seriously
vaccinated,
believe that. I mean, like if you're a
they're
chemist and
healthy,
you
and I'm
know
not.
about this stuff. You know about this stuff. I know about how vaccines work, and I've taken basic biology courses. The reason why
no, Roger, for real, man. Like we would put thimerosal and these adjuvants, Freud's adjuvant and
Okay,
the
this is
complete and the
weird.
incomplete.
Real
And we
quick,
put those things in rabbits, and we
Let
put
me
those
let
things
me
in
jump
mice.
in and cut both of you guys off real quick, right? So I'm on the CDC trying to find some numbers for the flu, and then there's like a flu view report, right? And if you click the link, it goes to this
Dead
site
link.
can't be reached.
Yes, it's a dead link. See, I told you.
That's pretty trippy.
A couple days ago, it was 50,000
That's pretty trippy,
people.
Roger. Come on.
50,000 people had the flu in America a couple days ago. They had already died, and 384 per day. That's the statistic. So, 7,000, 50,000. It doesn't take that. It's a big gap. You can see.
That's pretty weird. Roger, you gotta admit that's weird, right?
The threat of the fear is greater. Fear is the killer of the brain, not that some kind of virus that comes from China. It was designed for chinos.
Oh, so Eric just commented about burning the bodies. Eric, is this something I can actually speak on because we talked about that during? Right. Well,
black
no.
rain
So
in Japan.
right. Yeah. So
from all the bodies.
Yeah. Can I get in here? What's it called? We were talking about the how there was an emission of carbon for whatever reason that spiked in the Wuhan territory, and people started reporting movements of white vans that were going basically in droves, and people working at crematoriums overnight, right? So
yeah, they had the mobile incinerator vans for a while.
Well, that's not that. Okay, sure. That's not what I'm talking about, though. This one, what the graph showed was that there was a spike in temperature in the Wuhan area, and they were, I think it was like 140,000 units, right? That they measured, and when they did the science and they were checking on how much one body outputs when it's burnt. I think it was something like I don't remember the exact figures on it, but it totaled out to about like 40 to 50,000 bodies being burnt in Wuhan.
They may have burnt a lot of people because there was black rain falling in Japan just a couple weeks ago, and the black rain had a lot of soot and plasm, some type of just a gooey material, and that that may have come from China, from the mass incinerations. That's why I say that China probably has 200,000 to 2.5 million people that have died. But I think that these are dissidents that the communist Chinese have been waiting to execute.
Okay, so this is another source that we got on here, comparing both the influenza versus COVID-19 in terms of the death rates, right? So the death rate for seasonal flu typically of 0.01%, according to the death rate for COVID-19, appears to be higher than that of the flu. In a study published on February of 18th in the China CDC Weekly, researchers found a death rate from COVID-19 to be about 2.3% in mainland China, right? Versus the 0.01%. I guess that's like a U.S. number, so it's a little bit hard to compare there. Overall death rate, New England Journal of Medicine found that the overall death rate was slightly lower at about 1.4% for COVID-19. Still, the death rate for COVID-19 appears to vary by location and individual's age, among other factors, right? For instance, in Hubei province, the epicenter of the outbreak, 2.9% death rate, right? Well, again, like, sure, we can question the reliability of China's number, but Italy, the death rate's like around 10%.
Yeah, it was 8.5, but a lot of those people were already connected to death-related stuff. So
as in
you can't put the 2 and 2 together and expect to get the same, like a 4. You know, there's 4.5 or something. 2 plus 2 is not going to make 4. There were the elderly and health compromised people, so they were likely.
That's who's this flu has been most deadly against, right? In the past, at least from what we've been seeing here, right, in reported numbers, etc. It's the elderly population or secondaries, people with secondary. What do you call it? Secondary health issues that are being affected by that the most, right?
Yeah.
Compromised
exactly.
immune systems. One of the things that was interesting, though, is that, and this is kind of off of the mainstream media, more so with people on 4chan, individuals that were posting from Italy, where they're starting to see an increase in deaths of people that are younger. Not necessarily because the virus is deadlier, but because of a lack of medical resources to be able to treat everyone. You know,
and it also could be the lack of hygiene and young people's propensity to touch things.
Maybe, right? I don't know, but that's here we go. In general, what I feel, and this is my view on it, I don't know if I agree with either of the 3 scenarios that we went over, which are kind of like the overarching theories out there on what is actually going on. One thing that I do feel, though, that is going on, and again, this is me just saying more so like on a gut instinct versus like the anything tangible, right? This is more just my gut instinct, is that there's some sort of Machiavellian moment that's going to come out of this that could either go well or terribly wrong, right? We could either go...
We have to drop the bomb on China. We have to drop 2 of them.
I don't know if war is the answer. I don't know if war is the answer, honestly. But I mean in terms of our form of governance, right? Like we're at a crossroads, or we're getting to the crossroads to where one can lead down tyranny and the other one can lead down a more effective form of government, you know, to create a better version of whatever the fuck it is that we're doing.
It's not the innocent Chinese population that's the threat. It's their communist government. That government that is a human rights violator. It was the Clintons that brought them into the World Trade Organization in the 90s. Those Clintons are sinful people, and you know it, man.
That's why Trump.
What they got going on there in Mena, Arkansas, over there back in the 80s, that wasn't nice. What the Clintons had going on back there, and all those people they murdered.
Yeah, man. The Clinton body count. Hashtag Clinton body count. Look into that. You know, and let's
brought this on to us.
Let's pivot over to something that we were getting into yesterday before we ended yesterday's podcast. Right, it's going to take a dark turn here towards the Jeffrey Epstein realm of stuff. Right, so let's recap for everyone out there. Jeffrey Epstein, multi-billionaire, arrested on counts of like pedophilia, underage sex trafficking, all this other stuff. pending trial. It supposedly was going to spill the beans on a bunch of very, very important people at the highest levels that are involved in underage sex trafficking, pedophilia, and the third of which is, this is where it gets nebulous and a little bit foggy, ritualistic sacrifice of children and stuff like that, right? So that's the most out there one. The other two are
SRA.
like hard facts, but the most out there one is that. And what I wanted to get into, what we were talking about specifically yesterday, was Isaac Kappy, right? And interestingly enough, it for some reason it's been popping up on the radar again, right? So Isaac Kappy. Let's see if we can get I'm using what you guys are going to see on the screen right now. It's from the Phoenix Enigma website. I was listening to a podcast where this person, I forgot his name. His name's Corey something. But he runs a pretty dope website with a bunch of just information out there on different quote-unquote conspiracies. This one being the late that has resurfaced. This person, Isaac Kappy, was an actor. This is like a picture of him or what have you. He was in several movies in smaller roles, like in Thor, and I forgot which other ones, but Thor's like one of the more prominent ones. But anyways, he committed suicide more or less about a year ago. We're nearing, I think, the 1 year anniversary, if we haven't passed it yet. If not, then it's right around the corner. But before his suicide, he was going on Periscope, on Instagram Live, and talking about how his friend Seth Green revealed to him that he was a Satanist pedophile or practicing like ritualistic murder, I guess, of children, and showed him like a secret room behind a bookcase and all this craziness. And ever since then, he went out and put out a bunch of different stuff and just essentially making all these accusations against Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg, Jay-Z, just to name a couple. There's a huge list of different people that he accuses ultimately. And if you go to that Phoenix Enigma website, there's like a whole mind map that will take you down the rabbit hole with Isaac Kappy. And he a couple of days before he committed suicide, he went on Periscope, went on Instagram and everything, and repeatedly was stating, hey, I'm not suicidal, I'm not trying to kill myself, all this other stuff. And when he finally did kill himself, he jumped off of an overpass bridge on Route 66 somewhere outside of Belmont, Arkansas, Arizona, one or the other. Arizona, I think, wherever Route 66 is. And since then, like, that happened, but it's not very much talked about. And for some reason, it was mentioned on this one podcast that I listen to, fairly often. It's called Tinfoil Hat, and it was kind of just like a side note on one of the episodes that they had on him. And after that, maybe about a month ago, someone reshared. I'm part of this Facebook group called Earth We Are One, and they reshared his last stream, and I watched it and sat through it, and he's saying some outlandish stuff on there. But yeah, man, there's a lot of different things that go into that, right? Like a lot of, for example, how it kind of ties back into the whole COVID-19 thing or whatever. Another thing that was being manufactured at Wuhan, adrenochrome. Did you know about that?
Yes, the adrenochrome.
Yep.
That's right.
And the adrenochrome, can you explain
that? And they
that?
couldn't get their supply anymore,
Yep.
so something happened, something tricky happened there.
And just to
but
kind
that
of
adrenochrome is that's that whole thing with Ed Buck and what's his name, Adam Schiff, and those parties that they have, those methamphetamine parties that they have up there in California with those black Americans. You got apparently the adrenochrome that they extract, from a black is just more valuable to them.
As in like a black person?
A black person, that's right.
So they from their bloodstream
Sub-Saharan.
or what have you?
Yeah, and they do it in such a way, like they dangle like some methamphetamine in front of him. They've got the back of his head chopped off, so he's conscious, and like they're getting all his he's getting all pumped up, like his pineal gland, and then boom, they go and they extract it. And yeah, man, Chairman Adam Schiff. There was an article that I read about these people that were eating human brains, and they were a lot of these high-level politicians, and they were eating human brains, so they contracted these parasites inside their brain from eating the brains of the humans. It's something that occurs like in Indonesia or in
like cannibalism. Cannibals, they get those things, right?
The brains. Well, apparently these politicians that practice this type of ritualistic behavior that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Some of them have been known to eat human brains, like in that Hannibal movie, where Anthony Hopkins is eating Ray Liotta's brain. In that Hannibal movie, that's the kind of stuff that we talk about, the soft disclosure. Those guys look real like high society.
One of the things about the whole case with Isaac Kappy is there was a couple of one eyewitness that was working at a gas station near the overpass where he jumped to his death ultimately, right? Or quote unquote jumped to his death. And this lady, the dude that is behind the whole visual thing that you guys are looking at right now on the screen, the guy that runs the website Phoenix Enigma, let me tell you, so he dedicated, from his own words, 10 to 12 hours a day for 5 months compiling this whole mind map that we're looking at here, getting together like eyewitness testimonies, going down to like sheriff's office and getting copies of like evidence and what have you. And one of the things that he kind of found interesting was that one eyewitness that worked at the gas station there mentioned that she knew on the day that happened. She mentioned, hey, I know who that guy was. It was the homeless guy that was always around here. He'd been here since like February. He'd always come in to this store and, just like hang out and talk to other people and stuff. And then there was subsequently after that a couple of I guess what the fuck did he call it? Like how certain neighborhoods will have like a whole community like messenger, for example, like on a group message type of thing, just to kind of keep like vigilant or what have you. There's
message board.
Yeah, like message board. There you go. From like a neighborhood message board, etc. Right. So on that same message board, a couple more, like I think up to 6 in total, people also gave that same story. And when they saw the picture of Isaac Kappy, that he was the one that died, they were like, yeah, that's that homeless dude that has been hanging around here since like February. But Isaac Kappy was living in LA up until the moment of his death, where he drove out to visit his grandma, or not his grandma, his mother in Albuquerque, right? So that's at some point in time on his way over there is when he ended his life, right? And a lot of different speculation on here and a lot of different things that happened. One of the interesting ones on here is have you ever heard of V2K?
No.
So the V2K, this is one of the more out there things here, but if V2K is known as a voice to skull technology, right? Where with targeted individual voice to skull technology, where they'll literally like beam anything into your mind and make you hear stuff.
That paper that I sent you. Remember that paper I sent you where the guy went for a Freedom of Information Request Act for some Antifa, and then they sent that person a whole bunch of that technology. Yes, that was in there. Where you voice to skull. Yes, I remember, Josh.
So the one person that was with him the weekend before he ultimately lost it or committed suicide, whatever you guys want to call it, they were doing that to him continuously. And this one person that was good friends with him before he had left the LA area hung out with him on a weekend, right? And the person with him also experienced the whole thing, to where they had an episode where they were listening to a Phil Collins song. Oh, I think we lost Rick. Oh, no, never mind. Where they were listening to a Phil Collins song that was being beamed into them, and it wasn't coming out over the radio or anything. It was like they were listening to it through in their mind, and she heard it as well. And
sorry, I lost you guys there.
We can still see you. There you go.
He's just fucking froze for a minute.
I'm so sorry. It just disappeared on me. Somebody was calling, and I pushed the wrong button.
All right, it'll come back in a second. For the people on the stream, it's a little bit latent. But yeah, so they were both hearing a Phil Collins song in their head, and he was telling this person like, hey, this is what's been going on for a while now. And he would try to go into like deep meditation and what have you, to kind of like block out that voice of skull stuff. And I don't know how real that is, but that's
well, it's in that paper. I'll see if I can find that link again and send it to you on your phone later after this discussion. But the raw stuff of it is that a reporter had put in a Freedom of Information Request Act about Antifa a couple years ago in 2017, and the agent in the CIA gave them the all that stuff about the towers and the tech and the microwave amplification. And how they're doing things like that. And that was one of the things, voice to skull, where they could amplify something and send it into your. I had sent it to you a couple years ago, Josh, and I'll have to dig through and find it in the files. But I've got it.
Roger,
and
you
it
were
was
saying?
just quite a coincidence, because somebody had a theory that they were doing that to those Antifa type, and that's why they get them so riled up, that they're sending microwave messages to boost their just their attitude. And that's I don't know if that's paranormal or not, but that's definitely
not
something
normal.
that's real.
Yeah.
Let me jump in here.
We're doing it right now with Bluetooth.
Go for it.
So there's another theory about one of these things. About not one of these things. There's another theory about COVID-19, in that it's
the 5G theory?
Yeah, so I was gonna say it's completely a hoax, and that COVID-19 doesn't isn't constructed to actually like display any of those symptoms or whatever, but 5G does all of them. Me personally, I don't.
Did you know that Wuhan is the 5G city?
Rick, let him talk for a bit, Rick.
I'm not. I personally don't dive into any of the 5G stuff, just because everybody that I've ever heard talk about it doesn't understand how radio waves work. And not that I'm saying that I do, but
5G aren't radio waves. 5G is 5 gigahertz microwave bursts.
That's still radio.
It's not a radio wave. It's a microwave.
Okay.
Radio
well,
wave
either way, it's a frequencied wave, right? I understand that, and
it's a frequency, absolutely, but it's not a radio wave. It's not
right. Okay.
Frequency modulation.
Well, most of the time
amplification.
Most of the time that I hear these things, though, like it's most people are saying, like, oh, it's like fucking a few years ago that we had that third-party candidate that said, oh, I'm afraid that it might be the Wi-Fi getting all these kids sick, and it's like, like that's the same thing that I feel like kind of falls into that stuff. But tell me a little bit, like I guess tell me about like 5G and its role in this, if there is any.
Well, the Wi-Fi and the Wi-Fi is 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, and those are bio frequencies. They do affect biocellular structures. That's been proven. That's a scientific documented fact. So that's when I said, like, I raised my fingers. I was like, hey, the third thing. That was the third theory, was that the city of Wuhan has just rolled out a Wi-Fi 5G initiative, where every single stretch of that city, which is like a city, like maybe like Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, like a real big city. It's big. Every single stretch of that city is cloaked in 5G. So that may have been part of the heat source that people are seeing. And definitely, if you turn up the juice on the 5G, on the microwave amplifier, if you turn up the juice, those 5 gigahertz now have more power, and they can vibrate the molecular bonds that the atoms atoms that make up our cells are being vibrated by this frequency, and it can affect people. Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Roger?
Two tourists in South Padre Island just got confirmed with COVID-19.
Nice.
Over vacationing this last SPI. So yeah, that's it's gonna pop off. If we are going with the original theory that it is just a virus that was predicted years ago, that there was another pandemic that was bound to happen, but yeah, we'll see where that leads.
I want to circle back here to the whole Isaac Kappy thing, right? So when he lost his life, or when he passed away or whatever, he he supposedly there's a Dead Man Switch video that he released that was like, look, this is evidence of the whole thing going on. Now I'm gonna tell you guys, I've seen it. It is pretty creepy. Like, I don't know what it is, right? And Rick, I know you're probably not looking at the stream right now, so you're not gonna be able to see the video, but I'll tell you what's going on in it. Let me play this, and I don't know. Just be forewarned, it's creepy, and I don't even know if I should play it or not, or just let you guys play it on your own. But essentially, this is supposedly footage from the temple inside of Jeffrey Epstein's island. Right now, I've also heard a theory that it's actually a hotel in Turkey that people that are associated with like the whole pedophile thing go to, but I don't know which one's real. But this is the footage, and in the footage, let's see right here. It's a very short clip. There's little girls in what appears to be like some sort of like altar thing, dressed in like bikinis for some reason. Almost looks like a bathhouse of sorts. They're pouring water over an altar thing, and that's the whole thing. And supposedly that was Isaac Kappy's Dead Man Switch video. So, yeah, it's weird. There's like these young...
Alright. Did you get any comments? Did you see that?
What?
Nothing. Go ahead. I'm watching this though. That last...
Is that a video that he recorded himself, or is that...
No, nobody knows. Nobody even knows if this is if this is in fact his Dead Man Switch video, but it is fucking weird. Like, it is very... Yeah. On the Phoenix Enigma website, they have like the video. If you scroll down, they have a picture of what the place looks like, and you know, it's like it's definitely weird. There's like a star thing over what appears to be like a centerpiece altar of sorts. I don't know. And then there's like faucets all along the wall where you can get water out of it. Right? And if you have your iPad there, you can look at it. It's fucking weird, man.
I do, but then it shuts the light down. Like,
oh, word. Okay.
Right.
You
can see like how there's less light.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got the mind map right here and everything. I mean, it's a lot of information, man.
Dude, for real it is, and you can spend a good amount of time just going through all of this stuff in your anything from ritual occult numerology to something called the Judas Prophecy, official reports, Pizzagate, Pedogate, Voodoo Donuts, Nexium, 5D Earth. I don't even know what that is. Remote viewing, the CIA.
5D Earth.
Yeah.
Look, it has the SRA right there. It says it.
Yeah. Where was it? I just saw it right now. Here it is. Yeah, SRA. What is SRA?
So, being balls deep in the conspiracy at this point, where are we kind of going in terms of what do you anticipate the next things to see? Because I'll tell you this, Rick, and this is not a jab specifically at you, but from other like times that I've seen, I guess like the doomsday prophecies and what's going to happen and this and that, almost none of it has happened. Like I've been on this podcast now with Josh for about we're going on 2 years now at this point.
No, it's not anything against me.
And it's
the media.
Well, I mean, the media in what sense? And I'm not going to sit here and justify. I'm not going to sit here and justify what the media is doing. But I will say this: every time we have some sort of like conversation about something like this, for whatever reason, it's always very like apologist towards the right. And I'm just kind of putting that out there because I think that's where we always it's always the left that's doing the wrong, and I don't really think it has much to do with anything. I think people in power and people with money don't fucking have a party alignment. They could give a shit. That's an illusion. I think.
So you got to throw those words out of there of left and right because those words don't apply to what we're talking about.
Okay, you use it all the time though. You see what the point that I'm making. Okay, well, I mean,
I see the point that you're making, but I don't use those words all the time. And let's be quite clear: the 25 years ago, what is considered moderate or in the center of the Gaussian curve is now far left in what is the far left. So the right has not changed, and that's data. That's real data, man. So
check it out. I have my own conspiracy theory towards this, and I don't mean something that I've done like a lot of extensive like research on, or I mean not
but
research.
Let's just get something straight. Somebody like Ilhan Omar the congresswoman from Minnesota is a far right Islamic fundamentalist. How do you explain that?
I don't care.
Far right Islamic fundamentalist. She's a Sharia, pro-Sharia, pro-female genital mutilation. That's far right. She wants to stone women for getting raped. That's far right Sharia extremism.
But it's always
that has nothing to do with the left. So
okay, well, all
that's
right.
why you got to throw those words out of there. We're talking about Josh nodded over there. We're talking about people with power that don't want to lose their power, and they're going to do whatever they can to keep that power. That means that they got to make up a virus on the other side of the world, and they're cremating dissidents and Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang province.
Hang on a second. I'll tell you exactly what's happening right now, though. And here's the thing where I think it's going to kind of fly off the rails when we do start talking about something. You scared the shit out of me. What is this? Whoa, this looks really good. Holy shit. Hey, so check it out. We bought nori today because we went to a local grocer, and Kiana made rice balls.
Nice.
All right, so let me continue. I'll try it right now. Thank you. I love you. So then we... so we're talking about the what's actually going on, and Rick, I will say.
I'm listening to you, Josh. Roger. Keep it going.
Okay, so what we are going to talk about right here is what's actually happening. Okay, I work with a local group that is for, and I don't want to name them on here because I haven't had them on here yet, but I will eventually. I work with a group that's for the I guess. An advocacy group for immigrants and human rights, right? Mainly immigrants' rights, right? So what I do is part of my job, so you guys know, is going into detention centers, connecting with people that are either set up for deportation or that are currently fighting their case for whatever for whatever reason, right? Most of these times, the people who I know they're going to say like, oh, the rapists and the criminals, this and that. Everybody that I visited thus far, not anyone like that. They're all, you know, if they are high security, it's because they're repeat offenders in terms of crossing the border, right? And they're currently being prosecuted on whatever, right? I'm not going to get all their information or details out there because it is confidential to that extent. But what is currently happening now is we're seeing a crazy uptick in ICE raids. Right, and now here's the thing: ICE raids are happening in places where there's lockdown. Right, it's happening in California, it's happening here in Texas, right, and it's happening up in Louisiana, South Carolina, places that are in lockdown. Right, in Ohio, I mean, places that are in lockdown that ICE has pledged to stop. ICE and Department of Homeland Security. They made a statement last week. They said, as of this day, we're no longer going to enforce removal, and we're no longer going to conduct raids. Right? That was their official statement. Right? And I know because I read this. I have been on fucking hundreds of conference calls this week. Right? And we're gonna release a statement on this tomorrow. All these people are being policed, and they are being essentially forced to stay home because who doesn't get protections on these things? Immigrants. They don't get protections from any of these like emergency protocol or emergency legislation that's getting pushed, right? It even says on there for people who are being impacted by COVID-19 who are immigrants, we suggest that you report back with the consulate so you're able to understand what the benefits are for your country, right? And the consulate closed down 3 days ago. All right, so or 2 days ago, the U.S. and the U.S. embassy and consulate have closed down, right? So I can't do social visitation anymore, right? They've shut this down. They haven't let anybody go inside and visit these people, right? The standards for health super low, like incredibly low. And this is somebody who's on the inside. You always say something about like, oh, you know, that's I have insider information. This literally face to face with these people, right? So when I am over here and I'm seeing the state that they're living in, you see how terribly they're living, and how prone to something like this, an outbreak, completely decimating any sort of like, you know, system that's currently in place. So what's happening at this point? We're currently all petitioning for compassionate release, Now, compassionate release doesn't mean, hey, just let them fucking roam free and they're citizens now. No, compassionate release, it's you are basically released on bond with your family, with a caretaker, with, if available, somebody who's able to essentially foster you during the time that it's safer for you to be in this environment than it is for you to be in captivity, right? Or in isolation, whatever you want to call it. These rules that we're kind of trying to put forth are being shut down left and right. Now, what happened today? Now, this is just to bring you guys up to speed. The ICE petition, or is going to petition, it hasn't been officially released yet, but there is movement in office for it. ICE has petitioned for an emergency fund to combat ICE, to combat COVID-19 through ICE operations within their facilities. Right now, what does it fucking look like? As of right now, we don't know entirely what it looks like. But what has been proposed at this point is that they want to build more camps, treatment camps, right? I don't buy any of that shit at all, because what it sounds more like is that they're going to create more of these internment camps that have been horribly fucking run, and they're making it a lot easier to just simply, abuse the power and exploit the current situation that everybody's in, right, for the sake of just rounding everybody up and deporting them and getting them out of here, or expediting the deportation. Here's the fucked up part, an even more fucked up part. The biggest, and I'm sure if you know anything about the prison system, you'll know this, but the biggest IGSA, which is Intergovernmental Service Agreements, the biggest IGSA facilities are run by the Bureau of Prisons, the BOP. The BOP, in a completely unprecedented move, decided to go and completely suspend not just social visitation, but legal visitation too. That's illegal. They said by discretion, they will allow case-by-case representation, and this is all in a statement that they made public, dude. I can provide this with you. They themselves said legal representation is not allowed up to 30 days minimum. So that means in the next month, and you'll know if you start seeing an uptick in raids, an uptick in deportation, and people's cases being indefinitely postponed and keeping them longer in detention, right? They're not allowed to speak with their fucking lawyers right now. And the hotlines supposedly that are in place so they can call, there's free hotlines, but to make phone calls to the people that you need to talk to, or legal calls, they've made them expensive. They've given them a cap of 300 minutes, right? Like things like that. That's, these things that they're doing, it's all kind of geared up towards, if you're asking me, the current administration still pushing their agenda of, fear and racism in fucking deporting people. And it can be seen in just the fact that, like, the current administration is trying to end encryption in a fucking bipartisan bill. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
And encryption. They want to end things like WhatsApp, like fucking secret messages on Messenger, Signal. Those are all things that I use to communicate and coordinate with my team for the visitation program. Those are all resources that we use. We're no longer going to be able to do that, so that way they're always a fucking step ahead of us, right? All of this is public information, not some secret insider trading, knowledge kind of thing. So that, if I'm going to sit and say that there's anything that's really probable to me, I'm going to stick with that. I really do think that this is not, it's more of an opportunistic sort of thing, not like, oh, we purposely did this for the sake of, of furthering an agenda, but it was definitely like, oh, hey, this is going on. People are definitely home. We have an excuse to shut down legal representation, and, we know where to fucking find everybody. That's, it's as simple as that. Nobody's going to get in their way.
And I'm reading up on the emergency. Yeah, I'm reading up on that specific thing. It's called the Earn It Act, right? And the guise of it, or what they're presenting it as, it's like a way to crack down on, oddly enough, child traffickers and pedophiles that are supposedly using this end-to-end encrypted messages, right? So again, it's a dual-edged sword, because that makes sense to be able to want to shut that down. But, doing so would turn this country to look a little bit more like China than anything else, if you ask me. because they don't have anything like that in China. No WhatsApp, no sort of fucking privacy.
They got the Weibo and all that. The little little monito QQ, penguin. They got all that stuff in China. They just don't. They don't got the. They got that Dragonfly. The Google. I mean, they just don't have what we have. They have their version of it. It's more controlled.
Exactly, it's more controlled as opposed to like us, where we have a complete reign of it. You know what I mean? Like we're not in any way, shape, or form infringed upon by the state or what have you, the way that this is trying to do. You know what I mean? But
many of those apps, Josh and Roger, they're designed to collect information. You guys know that. You guys aren't going to object to that. That's not a conspiracy theory.
No, it's not.
The nature of the apps is to collect information.
I don't trust WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a fucking Facebook thing for sure. They're selling my data on that.
100%.
But all of the conversations.
Well, I don't know if they're selling data or not, but they're compiling this information and acquiring the personalized information of random people from around the globe that are using these apps. They might not just be after, spying on somebody, but there's a bigger picture, and it has more to do with artificial intelligence and the machine learning, and teaching the machines how to learn by understanding the human to human interaction with these. But it's all right for people to want to immigrate to America, but during these emergency times, the federal government does kind of snap the whip a little bit harder. If that makes any sense. But I mean, just ordinary law-abiding Americans. Some may face hardships other than others, but we got to try to get all these people that you work with the best resources they can get. I don't think that anybody in the current administration wakes up in the morning and says, how can I prevent a group of people using fear and racism as my main tools? How can I prevent those people from getting resources? I don't think that happens. It's actually
almost exactly like that, because we're talking about, what's still happening right now? Nobody's talking about?
The slave trade in North Africa, Libya, okay. $400 for a Negro.
Okay. Hang on. So,
nobody's talking about that.
You're
Hillary
right.
Clinton.
But, okay, right. So what we're talking about right here, though, is the wall is still being built using emergency funds that we could be using to appropriate towards the current crisis, right? Nobody's talking about that, but it's happening.
Those are issues that the mainstream media, and when I told you what I call the establishment, those guys are pushing their own agenda, Roger.
Hold on. Where have you heard that on mainstream media? Because nobody's talked about that.
I haven't. Nobody's talking about that on mainstream media, because the mainstream media has. If you've been following the Project Veritas and what James O'Keefe is doing, those guys in Project Veritas have a lot of hidden camera footage of people within ABC, CNN, and various media organizations that are blowing the whistle unknowingly that they're being recorded. But in their own words, they're saying that their bosses push for them to put news that is not objective, news that is disingenuous to the American people. And that's on record. So Project Veritas has videotape footage of multiple people within these news organizations. So your complaints are complaints going to the media. You gotta rope that in. It's the mainstream media that is not talking about these things, but many people on alternative media are certainly talking about it, about these issues that you've raised all over the internet. And some of these websites that you all go to, the Drudge Report. There's articles on the Drudge Report all the time about the INS or what you guys call ICE and the wall. It's out there on the alternative media. It's just not out there on the mainstream media. Josh?
I don't know. I don't have much to add on that, because I tend to stay away from just the mainstream media in general and find other outlets. They're not always. I don't know. They're not. Whatever you're getting your information from, you always got to take everything with a grain of salt, regardless of whether it's CNN or the Gray Zone, or Drudge Report, or MSNBC, etc. I don't know. I don't think we're, and this is maybe a high point for the establishment, quote unquote, right? But like the reliability of information out there is now a little bit more difficult to, trust, I suppose. Versus,
you have to use your best judgment. You
exactly.
have to use your tools, whatever you learned in whatever high school you went to or university, and how to judge character, judge information, take it and make an analytical assessment of what you've just got that's objective and doesn't have any emotional content based on your own preconceived ideas. If you're not able to do that, you're at a loss. Not you two guys, but
yeah, like the people in general
will be at a loss if they're not able to reason that toilet paper and water isn't going to save the day at the end. And there was a media panic. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that was real. The media panic was real. I went to go pay the bills at the HEB, and I don't watch the news. I spend most of my time in this backyard that you guys just saw me in. So I'm out here doing backyard stuff, working on my yard, and I go to pay the bills, and all of a sudden the whole HEB is empty and all the lines are open. I've never seen that in my life. And I lived through the killer bees in the 80s, the Russians that were coming to get us in the 80s, the whatever it was, the SARS and the Zika, I've been through it all. It's not. I went through the 1999, all that stuff. None of that, like what you were saying, Roger.
The
Laredo
water crisis.
Yeah, that one too. But things, you just have to learn how to kind of sift through what the information is. People have been doing it, and we've talked about it, Josh, since the time of Rumi, where Rumi has poetry about the field and about all of this information that's out there. And you guys probably talked about some of that on your time travel podcast that you did, or going off on the other stuff. But we got into a lot of different things multiple things going on at once.
We were too surface level on that one, I think. But yeah, we did have
what I'm saying is, in a nutshell, is that Sufi mystics from 1500 years ago, 700 years ago, 1,000 years ago have been writing about the things that we ourselves are talking about at this moment, because the information is always out there in an electromagnetic field, and that information simply needs to be acquired. That's why that Freedom of Information Request Act about the Antifa, and all of a sudden this reporter gets the EM field boosters, that thing that you talked about with Isaac Kappy and the voice to skull. All of that stuff is real. The machines that they got on some of these cop cars that they can zero in on your conversations inside the house, or the Fed cars, but all that stuff is real. Cobra, I think is what they call it, or I forget what they call the device. But that's
Cobra fucking Commander.
Yeah, Cobra Commander.
Well, in any case,
I don't want to get too far off, but you when you approached me in the morning, it was like Corona, and like I think the Corona is real. I don't want anyone that's listening to say like, hey, this guy's crazy. Like, Corona's real. It's a real virus. You can catch it. And 7,000 people, if that's what we saw in America so far, infected, or worldwide. What was that CDC data that you have? 7,000 in America.
Yeah, 7,000 in America. Yeah, about
96 deaths.
Yeah,
up to now, up to this point.
And it's expected to like triple in the next 5 days or something like that.
Well, there's always a logarithmic, growth curve with these type of viruses, but that accelerates and then it decelerates as well once the virus reaches its.
Well, yeah, one of the things that I saw a lot of people panicking about today was that Wuhan is getting back to work.
Yeah.
They've stopped. They finished with their coronavirus.
I gotta tell you, I had a little girlfriend from Wuhan, centers. And she was a redheaded Chinese, and man, I couldn't. I mean, that all those little girls always break your heart. So sometimes you get a little angry.
I don't know what the fuck that means.
I said some mean things about Wuhan the other day, and I hope I didn't do a paranormal special there and send some bad vibes to Wuhan, because they're innocent people.
Right.
So we do have to ultimately, and this is the thing that I'm telling you, I want to tie it back to those mystics. We really just have to have a positive attitude about the things we do. We have to keep the trust that we have a bond with some being that created us. Whatever you believe in, whatever system of belief you have to keep that trust. And if you don't, you're lost without it. Regardless of the amount of material goods you have. If you don't have that trust, you're lost. So you need to zero in on that. I mean, we're gonna have to lock down here in Laredo and obey those rules. But what else can we do?
Yep. Roger, you're gonna say something right now?
I was gonna say sorry that I'm munching out. It's just that.
Oh yeah,
No,
super unprofessional, but it's all good.
Kiana doesn't normally cook, and when she does, I go on record and say, but
it's decent.
This, she fucking killed it, dude. And this is all stuff we got today from a local grocer. We got the nori, we got rice tuna, wasabi sauce, and then she had it what she gave me from broccoli, carrots, and tomatoes. Fucking dope. Really good stuff. Anyway, sorry. Didn't mean to derail it.
Oh, it's all good, man.
No, that's all right, man. It's just information is out there. Everybody's got their own right to access it. I just don't want America to turn into some type of police state.
Exactly, and that's what I want to kind of end on, right? If you guys are if you're still watching or listening, what have you, the one thing I do want you guys to take away is to just keep your eyes peeled, because again, I feel like this is the precipice for that one Machiavellian moment, and if we're not careful in the way that we handle shit, we can end up, completely under tyranny, right? This is one of those moments that I feel like it's gonna change the rest of the future.
You're never gonna be under tyranny if you've got a weapon in your hand.
Exactly, right? So stay strapped and stay frosty.
I got these fucking chopsticks.
Don't ever forget the best weapon is the human heart. So, you can't reason your way out of something. You can't reason your way out of something. Any kind of weapon you got ain't gonna work.
That's
so
true,
you gotta unify
facts.
these things. There's many things that you have to put together as people that are listening to this podcast.
Yeah, Roger, anything you want to say as we close out here?
Like plugs? Yeah, sure. So, the mic drop on Thursday canceled. The Cultura Comedy Fest on Thursday canceled. The Cultura Comedy Fest on Saturday canceled. Everything's canceled, man. Whatever. No, let me just tell you this. On a serious note, I am wanting to do something here, and it's going to be a little thing that I'm going to be doing as part of Aliens on the Border. So you'll see some less interesting podcasts, I think. But I'm going to try to make them cool. I want to do what it's called Locals on Lockdown. It's going to be a mini series. I have a lot of fucking time because I've been switched to work from home because I haven't been able to go and hit any of the detention centers or any of that kind of stuff. So I have a lot of time in my hands, and if we don't have anybody scheduled to do podcasts in the next coming days or whatever, I'm gonna end up just going here and working on pairing with other locals who are handling the lockdown their own way. And I think honestly what I want to do is I want to catch up with the people that haven't been able to catch up on Aliens on the Border. So we'll do a mini episode, 15, 20, 30 minutes max. And then we'll do that. So that should be fun. Keep an eye out for that. If you want to join me and you want to talk some shit, whatever, I'm more than happy to do that with you guys. But it will be an Aliens on the Border presents sort of thing, or Aliens on the Border network. We'll figure that shit out. But it's just going to be me and somebody else on Skype, the way you see us now, just talking. So if you want to tune in on the conversation or something like that, I'm going to welcome you guys to do that, because I do understand that at this point, people are probably really bored, not being able to go out or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll do that.
Rick, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, don't forget. Well, I mean, I guess it's my last words. For anyone that's working at home, you got to keep up with the routine and still put on your work clothes. You still kind of got to get dressed and get into work mode and get into that mindset so that you can separate from that and then go break. Otherwise, you're just going to have kind of a bubble that you're not able to get out of. So you have to set up mind zones where you go into this area and boom, that area is for something in this area. And a lot of that is the clothes. As a kid, I mean, in the 70s, they had the Mr. Rogers show, and Mr. Rogers had his little uniform for everything and that kind of stuff. If you're an adult, I mean, I'm not saying to go watch Mr. Rogers, but at least pay attention, wear the right clothes for the right thing and try at least your best if you're staying at home. That's gonna help people to keep the mundane out and to keep the cabin fever away. You know?
I think yeah. Well, that's actually like exactly what we did. So we Kiana and I kind of just we've got a big place with 3 other roommates, and we all just kind of allocated the space to do different things. So I'm actually looking into getting into shirt printing. So I'm going to be looking into that a lot. Thanks to Ernie Garcia letting me his podcast setup. It's really fucking sweet. I can't show it to you right now. This what I'm doing just with this headphone is just this plugged into my laptop. But Ernie has lent me a mixer and a pretty sweet microphone right here. So we're gonna be I'm gonna be setting that up as soon as I can figure it out. And we'll do some more cool shit. So yeah, man, that's it for me. Rick, thanks very much for sitting here and being like super cool. I think this is the first time that we don't go off the rails and attack each other.
Well, we never go off the rails or attack each other. It's just
when it gets
the ability to ascertain the point of view that both of us are making. It becomes less clear once emotions cloud the brain. It has nothing to do with any of us. It's just that, like, if I say something and Palos, like, chingada, like if you grew up in the 80s and somebody said something from Nixon and you went to United and you're like, you want to throw them the finger, because they went to Nixon. It's
real quick, Rick, this is an audience question here. Do you think that God is an AI?
No, God is real. God is just there. There's only one interpretation of God, and that's why so many people have their belief system. And if that person believes that God is an AI, they're welcome to believe that. But one door will always lead to the ultimate door, and there's just one being. That's why there's different religions, because those religions help those people to get to those places. One God, only one being.
Rick, final thought. Go. Leave us on. What does all this mean?
Well, it's like this. It's like there's fish that are in the ocean. And those fish, like if they're talking to the other fish, I've told you guys these stories about the fish. Like some of these fish here that they need water to survive. And then they're like, oh my goodness. And the little fish runs to his grandfather and says, Grandpa, I've never heard of this thing called water. And the grandpa laughs and he's like, don't worry, you're going to be all right. Because he needed the water to survive. So, that's really it. Like, it's just a bunch of hype. His little fish friends hyped him up. He went to his grandpa. His grandpa set him straight. So we just need people to be setting people straight, and there's a lot of people that aren't willing to set people straight anymore, and that's just it. It's not it's not anything against to hurt people's feelings, but that's just it. That's just kind of how it goes, man.
Rick Matamoros, everybody.
Thank you for coming on, Rick. And for tomorrow,
Josh.
For a plug I have here for tomorrow, we'll be hanging out with Dos Leones. Not sure if we're gonna go in studio or not. We'll see. If they are coming to my home, then they'll be decontaminated before. So,
yeah, I'm not gonna be there. Your place. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you gotta keep yourself isolated. This is a good thing you got going on with this Skype thing.
Yeah, so we'll figure out with the Skype. I'm pretty sure we can add multiple people on here either way, so it'll be fine. But
let me know if you need anything else, man. I always got access to this information behind the firewall. So.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys for tuning in.
And Roger.
Stay fucking, keep your all-seeing eye open, dude. Just keep your fucking head on a swivel and stay frosty. Peace.
He turns himself into a pickle.
Fucking